Mic check. Mic check. Looks like it's working. Hey, Laura. Welcome. Good to see you. I hope you're still here. I apologize if you were here and then I didn't start and you left. Uh, all right. Oh, alrighty. Um, I almost ended the broadcast by accident. That was dumb. All right. You're president. Awesome, Laura. Welcome. How you doing? Hope you're feeling better. Hope you're still on that upward climb to feeling better. Hello. Struggling with a cat on your desk. Good luck. I love them, but those little suckers, man. uh, I was at work one day, and uh I had to walk away from my computer for a minute, and I was what's it called? I was messaging with my director, and I walk away from my computer and I come back and there's just a bunch of like random stuff messaged to my director, just, key matches. And he's like, "Hey, you have cats, don't you?" I'm like, "Yep, I do." uh, I generally, I try not to leave my cats alone in my room ever, because I don't trust them to not get into things. But there are instances where it's like I'm going to be back in a minute or whatever, so it's like just run out, come back or whatever. Yeah. So, anyways, but yeah, I am extra cautious, um, because like usually, I mean, my paints and everything aren't accessible for them, but I I still am concerned about that stuff. Hopefully, my face tracking doesn't start tracking the skull on my shirt today, because it has done that in the past. um, yeah. So today I'm hoping to finish this painting for the homework for Nicholas Uribe's class. And basically, it's all dry at this point, and what I'm going to be doing is just white, either from opaque to transparent, and just using that to model in the form and everything until I start cheating, um, and going back in with some of my umber, um, you know, because I probably will do that at some point. Let's see, yeah, it's all pretty dry. I mean, I don't think it's like, how can I put this? In oil paint, it gets dry, but not like really dry. Like if I took what's it called? Um, Solvent and went over it, I'm sure the paint would come off. I don't know if it'll come off with my oleo gel though, which I'm gonna check right now. It looks pretty solid, good. So I can oil out. I oil out with oleo gel. It's not necessarily the best thing to oil out with. Um, but I do like it. So it's not like, I don't know. It's my preference basically, is I guess what I'm getting at. Um, I have oiled out with walnut oil. Walnut oil is you have to make sure not to leave a lot on the canvas because it's so slick. But as long as you do that, it's fine. Let me see. I literally can't see where I'm oiling out unless I'm at an angle with the light. How's your project going, Laura? I know you mentioned you're starting something recently. Unless I'm getting you confused with someone else, which might be the case because I'm dyslexic and I get written names confused all the time. But yeah. All righty. Alrighty. Let's take a second to assess things and then get started. There's definitely some things here that like need some major fixes. Um, most of the most of the major fixes are because I didn't take the time to get the drawing correct. uh, yeah. So that's the major stuff there. But yeah. Let me also, I guess I'm going to clean up my palette just a little to make space for my white. Uh, so Laura says, okay, well, I have a project. Okay. You spent hours today cleaning off the painting desk. That had lots of other junk on it. Finally got the tabletop easel put up. Nice. Yeah. Freaking maintenance, keeping everything clean and like, workable is I feel like that's like one of those, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a hidden labor. There's a word for it. Where it's like um I think the origin is for like women who do labor, or for not just women, but I think the origin might be from that. But people who do labor that isn't like paid, and but yeah, it's like, oh, you're just going to be painting, and it's like, yeah, but maintaining the place is also a lot of work too. You grabbed all the little oil paint sets you've collected over the years. Nice, awesome. That is one thing. If people, anyone who works freelance or, is pricing out their work, like that's something you got to consider when you do that. Like, I end up spending hours cleaning up my desk, which sounds like such a stupid thing to include in the price. But like, yeah, actually, that, especially if it's because you like have to go from one project to another, like, yeah, that's an expense. Hmm. Let's see. Then you got distracted by loading the dishwasher, washing all the pots and pans, folding laundry, surrounding tidy, whatever stuff. In other words, you were stalling. I mean, maybe, but like that stuff also needs to get done, right? I stall in the other direction. I'm like, oh, I need to put the laundry away. I'm really busy with work right now. So I don't really wash my brushes. Um, And I'm not always good about like cleaning them, I'll be honest. I need to be better at that. So I painted last night on a different painting. So I still have leftover color in my brush. Trying to get rid of it right now. Since I don't use solvents to wash my brush, usually what I do is I just grab some of the color, like I grabbed some white and I just mixed some of it to get the tint out. And then sometimes I'll use some walnut oil too. Yeah. Laura says, "Yeah, I can't paint if there's chaos." Oh, that's never stopped me. Yeah, that happens to me too. You said, yeah. I um I discovered something interesting not that long ago. So, and I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert on this. So, like, I could have some of the facts a little off. But I was recently diagnosed with ADHD um, at like eight. Well, recently I say it's actually been a couple years at this point. So, um, yeah, at around like when I around age 40, I was diagnosed with ADHD. Um, and since being diagnosed with ADHD, I have I've gone into it a little to learn a little more about what it, the nuances of ADHD because it's a lot more complicated than, you know, uh, TV makes it out to be. That's one of the reasons I didn't think I had it. Um, Hold on a second. Let's see. The chaos inserts itself into your brain when you're struggling to get started. That's what you meant. Oh, I see. Okay. So, and my understanding is ADHD can present in all kinds of ways. So it's not a, you know, one thing applies to everybody type of situation. Having said that, um, one thing that I discovered that was like I didn't even know this was a real thing. Um, and it's one of those weird moments where you learn something really like obvious about the world, but you've seen it completely different your whole life, and so you're just dumbfounded, or at least I was. Um, so all of this is a long-winded way of getting to like doing chores, right? Apparently, and I didn't know this, um, apparently people feel good after doing chores. Like they've accomplished something and so they feel good about it. Um, and they get that like dopamine hit and they feel good inside because they check something off of their to-do list and you know just it's very satisfying and feels good and all that stuff. Um, I didn't think that was real my whole life. Like I thought it was like only for people who have like OCD. Um, yeah, because I don't get that. I don't get that dopamine hit. So it was an interesting moment where someone explained it to me, and I'm like, wait, this actually makes you feel good? Like when you're done with it, this you feel good about it. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, and like other people have that experience too. And I'm like, is this I feel like I'm being lied to right now. But no. Let's see, doing chores is agony though. You avoid all it at all costs. My house is a disaster. You don't get the rush. I feel you, Laura. Do you, by any chance have ADHD? It's like people who go to the gym, they feel good. I I think that's a I think that applies to everybody. I will say I think that going to the gym applies to everybody. It might not feel good in that exact moment necessarily, but when your body feels better, you feel better. So there's no, like, even if you don't get that dopamine rush, you'll still feel better overall. Hi, Michelle. Yeah, I asked if she has ADHD by any chance, because yeah, I really didn't know that was a real thing. I thought that was fake. Like, you see it on TV, and I'm like, I don't know. I thought that was some weird fake thing that was just like, in the movies or on TV or whatever. I didn't think it was a real thing. Laura says she does not have ADHD, but neurological stuff runs in her family. Okay. Yeah, yeah, I didn't know I had it either. Until, like Michelle said, until we did it. We did a bunch of online tests. But the thing that cemented it for me was when I got prescribed uh what was it? Adderall. Yeah, yeah. I got prescribed Adderall, and that made me into a zombie when I took it. I didn't get hyper. I was like falling asleep in my chair, practically passing out. Which apparently is not a normal person response to a strong stimulant. I do take other stimulants and they work really well for me, but Adderall specifically was funny and it made me very, very sleepy. So today, the idea is to use only what's it called? Opaque to transparent white, and just use that to model everything. I'm starting off with the background just to get a feel for it because I don't usually work like this, so I'm just kind of putting in some things that are not like super important um, to get quote unquote right. I will say it is shocking how like opaque this white is with um what's it called, and chalky it is. I don't know, like I said, I don't normally work like this, so yeah. Well, Michelle, I will say the funny thing is talking to my mom after being diagnosed, my mom did say that there were doctors that wanted to diagnose me with that, and because my mom just didn't want to put me on more medication and stuff, she never got me she never got me checked out for it. So apparently there were, you know, there were indications, but it just never happened. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could mix. I know this is kind of counter to the exercise, so I'm not going to do it. But I do wish that I could mix um, the burnt umber, sorry, raw umber into my white, because it would be less like shocking how like chalky it is. Laura says she has 3 dogs and 8 cats in her house, so I can imagine the hair and dust. Yeah, that's a lot. And yeah, we have a lot, so we're familiar with it. Yep, tumbleweeds. Yep. When I was in high school, a friend of mine had a dog. And I have no idea what breed of dog this was. Um, he was a big dog. I'd say probably somewhere around the like 70-ish pounds. I'm not sure because I was a kid at the time. But that's my like recollection. And if you have you have you ever seen what is it? Have you ever seen Looney Tunes? Um, there's the red hair monster that what's it called? That Bugs Bunny deals with sometimes. This dog was that, but black. Just like a walking mop. Just hair. Um, to the point where he was once attacked by another dog and just didn't know because the other dog was smaller and just got hair. Like literally didn't even feel it. So, yeah, just reminds me of that. That's all. Yeah, it's weird. This is super chalky. I'm not a huge fan. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think I need to just put in some like some of my whitest whites just so I can get my value scale in. Because without it, it's very hard to judge. So I am actually just going to do that right now. These marks may get removed. They are just some like background lights and stuff, so they're not the most important. But like I said, I need that scale, that color value scale in there because right now I'm really struggling to even see how light is light. Yes, Michelle's trying to get us adopted to Canada. Very nice. So I'll be honest, I know I've said this already, but like even when I put it in opaquely, I am not crazy about this look. Yeah. Um, it's always, I think in art, it's also good sometimes to do things you don't like or that aren't your favorite because A, you can grow to like them, in which case you've unlocked something new. And if you still don't like it when you're done, well, then you just have something on your list of things you don't like and you know to avoid. So it's not the worst thing in the world to, you know, do this and be like, yeah, I'm not a fan. But yeah, it's a discovery. I felt that way with the what's it called, Zorn palette, and I ended up liking it a lot more than I thought I would at the end. I still was glad to be done with the exercise. Like I said, I had more. I enjoyed it more at the end than I did at the beginning, and I definitely see the value in it a lot more having done it versus not having that experience. But yeah, I wish I could mix. Like what I really want to do is mix in some of the like here. I'll do a little demonstration if I can find any wet paint here. It's really none of this wet anymore. Here we go. A little bit of my raw umber. Like just a little bit of it with some white. You know what? I take that back. I don't like it more. It grays. That's not a good color either. That's gross. I don't like that either. I take back what I said. Nope, don't like that. Uh, okay. It looks good. Thanks. I'm glad you like it. I I'm not like disliking it. I'm just saying that there's something about the white. Here, let me zoom in a little. Um, so you can see. Hold on a second. Uh, that's weird. I can't actually get what? That is stupid. How am I supposed to get Okay. Program, you're being dumb. Wow, that's an I hold on, let me see how this works. I literally can't get it up to the where it's supposed to what? That apparently I need to work on this program a bit because I can't I literally can't get it to the top. That's so stupid. What is happening here? Hmm. Okay, never mind then. Sorry, no zoom in today. I don't know what's going on. I love technology so much. Love it. Anyways, okay, but the if you mix white with the raw umber, it just grays out. Okay, I'm not even gonna keep this in the painting, but this is what I want. Grab some whatever's left of my yellow and some white and some red. That's what I want. This like creamy red, rich red, yellow, I guess orangish gold. That's the word I'm looking for. That's kind of what I want. more than the chalky white, but you know, whatever. It having limitations on your artwork is often very good to do. Like exercises that limit certain elements of your artwork is often very, very good. It's either very good as a way of growing or it produces really good artwork. Uh, so even though it can be frustrating sometimes, it's very, very beneficial to practice these things. There's a phrase that they use in I've heard in production and movies a lot, which is that creativity is born of limitations. Um, they get that in movies a lot because they need to, you know, they have a limitation of time or budget, and they need to make something look good, and you know that's where you get all these like weird, just all kinds of happy accidents or something where like you know sometimes it's things that turn out to be super iconic uh and it was all just like they needed something so they did it and that's it like what was it uh Mike Myers I think it is from Halloween. His mask is like I think it's a Will Shatner mask folded inside out because they needed something. It wasn't like I don't think if I remember correctly that wasn't like intentional. They needed something at the time. Um, you know, the Scream mask they bought from a what's it called? Just a local store, like a Halloween store. Um, you know, Dark Vader's like um iconic like sound is like a scuba diving thing. You know, it's all this stuff. Like, yeah. Yeah, limitations are good to impose on your artwork a lot of times. And on a kind of side note, if you are studying, and this is essentially a study, this is homework for a class. In, in case anyone's curious, I'm taking a class with Nicholas Uribe, who is a fantastic painter. You can check him out on Our Painted Lives on YouTube or their website. Um, he's amazing. So, um, but yeah, when you're studying, limiting the variables is also super valuable to do. So, all to say that I'm grumbling and groaning, but it's all good too at the same time. Nicholas was actually in here apparently yesterday for a little bit watching me paint, which is funny. I wish he had jumped in the chat. That way it really would have felt like a, what's it called? Because I watch him paint live. It would have been fun to have it reversed. Oh yeah, too bad he didn't say hi. Yeah, I agree. Too bad he didn't say hi. But, you know, he probably had it on in the background or something, I'm sure. But yeah, anyone who doesn't know him, I recommend his channel. He has a ton of videos. A lot of them are, he recorded a bunch of videos, him and Danny, his fiance. Uh, they recorded, I think it was like, they did like but around 5 videos a week for 2 years. There was some times that they missed, you know, holidays, stuff like that, and also at one point they dropped down to 4 because it was unsustainable. But yeah, that was a lot. That was insane. And then now he mostly does live stuff, but yeah, so he has a ton of videos on his YouTube channel. Once again, that's our painted lives on YouTube, and they also have it as a .com. And yeah, just insane. So there's endless videos there to watch, practically. So I'm kind of, so I am, and some of this I'm kind of glazing because I'm putting down paint transparently, and it's wet paint, so it, I guess, qualifies as glazing. Although with the white, it's kind of looking like a dead layer, which whatever. But in order to control it a little better, sometimes I'm more scumbling than glazing. And the difference is that when you scumble, you're basically um, essentially just using a dry brush uh, to deposit less paint, but it still, is visible, still does what it needs to. But with scumbling, it's less intense in this instance, at least, and lets me do more subtlety. But of course, it's limited to less intensity. And also limited to less defined brush marks. I don't know if that's all the time, but in this instance, it definitely is. So technically speaking, I think that the idea of this exercise is that we like I think it's only basically supposed to be 2 layers. Um, I think. I think I'm going to probably put in 3 because some of this white that I'm putting down isn't meant to be this bright, but it's the only way that I can cover up the dark pencil lines that are in the wrong place. So what that means is I'm going to put down, thick opaque white, let it dry, and then come back and use raw umber on top of it. Yeah, I was so sloppy with my brushwork. It's crazy. I'm looking at it now, you know, um, and I was so sloppy with a lot of this. And I see why too. Like it's not out of necessarily out of laziness. It's it's more a I'd say probably like a habits issue and a process issue. I keep putting my head in there. Sorry. Try and keep my head out of this, but out of frame, but it's be difficult sometimes. But yeah. Either way, I won't be working on this on Wednesday, streaming Wednesday. And on Wednesday, I have another painting that I'm going to be doing. That one's a purely black and white, like straight up, just black and white. Should be very, very straightforward in concept, at least. We'll see. I may or may not draw it out. I will say, drawing it out prior to the stream, I feel like it did speed me up, which makes sense if you think about it, because I spent the time I normally spend uh, on the drawing. I spent prior to drawing, right? So, I mean, prior to streaming. So, I don't think it actually sped me up any, but it definitely sped me up on stream. I don't know that that's necessarily worth doing um, because I feel like the drawing and the lay in are probably the most what's it called? Probably the best parts of the painting when it comes to streaming. Yeah, this is driving me crazy right now. So the issue I'm running into is normally I would use lighter values to start like modeling things in. Like here, for instance, there's some hair that's like, strands of hair. But it's because this isn't opaque but transparent. I and it's not a single tone. Like had it been just a single tone, I could then model with the white, but because it's not, you get these edges, unintentional edges in there. So that's something to be aware of. If I'm ever going to do something like this again, I will like there are areas where if I know I'm going to go back in with white, I will just lay in like a flat color, and then I can use the white to model in. Laura says it's pulling some blue grays out. Yeah, it in con because titanium white is so cool, it looks like blue and gray in contrast to the warm colors. Absolutely. But like yeah, like what I want now here, for instance, is I want to go back in and like put in more darks, but I can't at the moment. So it's just, you know, like I said, it's good to catalog these things so you know if you ever need to do it again. Like I'm mentally trying to catalog like all the things I would need to do differently if I were to do this again. And there's a lot. So anywhere that I'm going to rely on the whites to model, I would put down flat, uh, you know, just flat coverage. The other thing is, I would also, I think, and this may seem obvious, but this isn't how my normal painting works. So even though it's obvious when talking about it, it didn't come natural and I didn't think about it earlier. But I would divide the painting up into essentially uh, two tones. Everything that's like 50% gray to black, I would complete 100% with only the umber. I wouldn't expect to touch it with the white at all. Which might sound obvious, um, but because of how I normally paint, that doesn't come naturally to me. Which I can elaborate on in a second. But the other thing is anything that's like in the 50% light, there I would be much more conscious of all my edges where I know that, like I said, where white's going to go, because I'm going to have to put in like essentially flats. Yeah. So the reason this like didn't, I don't want to say didn't come naturally, but like I didn't think about it, is because when I paint, I will go in and I don't have a problem mixing in like my lights into my darks and my darks into my lights. I flow kind of between them pretty freely, and I'm not very worried about my painting looking chalky or muddy or anything like that. I mean, I'm not worried about it because I compensate for it, so I don't feel like my paintings look that way. If they did, I would be more concerned about it, but I don't feel like they do, so, not a problem. But when you're putting in when you're mixing wet into wet or opaque into, opaque over something else, all those little edges and stuff don't matter because you're either covering them up or mixing them out. So if I take like, if I take a very light color and I mix it into like my shadows, if my shadows are still wet, I'm essentially mixing on canvas. Now, you shouldn't mix on canvas necessarily, but when you're painting wet into wet, there's a degree of mixing that happens naturally. Um, but yeah, but even if that's not the case, I could still, like, for instance, for parts of the face, I could still mix a opaque medium tone and then go in and cover some areas that need, modeling that I'm struggling to do with the transparency right now. So yeah, it's interesting. Also, the pencil lines are driving me crazy. Like, I wish they weren't there now. Which is funny because in other artists, I've definitely seen like I've definitely seen artwork from artists that I love, and they'll leave like pencil lines in their paintings or something, and I love it. I'm like, oh my God, I love seeing your pencil lines. I love seeing your construction stuff. I love seeing your sketch. I love all of that. But on my own stuff, I'm like, no, I don't want that there. Unless unless I meant to leave it there. I think I didn't explain something very well earlier, but so okay, here's a perfect example. Right here, um there's some pencil lines and some marks here that I want to cover, but I don't want it to be white. I want it to be, a if white is 10, I want it to be, an 8 or a 7. I can't I can't cover with a 7 because in order to get a 7, I have to go transparent. So I can't actually get rid of that mark with my current limitations. So that's what I was getting at. But yeah, Laura, to go back to your comment about it pulling some grays and blues, um, yeah, it is very reminiscent of the dead layer that they use for what's it called? For like laying in a painting. I don't paint like that, but yeah. Hey Elijah, welcome. Loving these brushy strokes. Thanks. Appreciate it. How's it going? It's going well. I am kind of talking through my process right now. So for anyone who doesn't know, um, and I don't know if you do, Kelly, but Yeah, I'm taking Nicholas Uribe's uh, class because you're never too good to learn new stuff. So I'm taking his class, and this is some of the homework for the class. And there's a bunch of limitations and different techniques that I'm using that I'm not used to. So I'm kind of cataloging it and trying to think through it as I'm going through it. If you're being gracious, the other way of looking at it is I am complaining a lot. So, you know, it all depends on how you want to look at things. You know, yeah. Yeah, Nicholas is a fantastic painter, and his class sold out in like 30 minutes, I think, or faster. I don't know. I bought the tickets and then I went home. I was on my phone. I went home and looked at it again in 30 minutes later, and it was already sold out. So I have no idea exactly how long it took, but yeah, it was fast. And here I'm actually coming to one of the biggest mistakes I made in this painting, uh, which I'm going to talk about. New techniques. Ooh, that sounds great. I'm so happy you're doing his class. You're feeling the burn. Yeah, yeah. So, biggest mistake, okay, in this possibly whole painting. So let's go over it real quick. So I, when I first did this, I laid out, I did the drawing first. If you go back yesterday and watch the video, you'll see it. It starts out with the drawing already in place. The drawing I then sealed with acrylic medium. Once I sealed it with acrylic medium, I can't touch the drawing anymore. It's there forever. I can't erase. But I wasn't 100% accurate on the drawing. And that's where the problems start. Normally, this isn't an issue for me, but because of because of the techniques that I'm using, it's a much bigger problem. So the biggest issue, or the biggest mistake possibly, is right here where, let me see if I can zoom in at least on that area. Yeah. Okay, you can kind of see it. It's a little dark. But there are pencil lines right here. This area is supposed to be light. So what happened was I because I wasn't accurate with the folds, I essentially drew the dark part of the folds in the light part and the light part in the dark areas. So that was the mess up, right? Everything was shifted a little because I wasn't that accurate with it. And so when I was laying in the transparent raw umber layer, I was like, okay, that's not a big deal. I'll just, paint in the dark areas because that's all I can do with the umber is paint in dark areas. And then when I go in with the whites, I'll fix it. But here's the mistake. I can't cover up pencil lines with a midtone in this technique because white is opaque, and then the darker I go, the less opaque the white becomes. So if you have something very dark underneath the light, underneath where you want to cover, you can't cover it up. So the only way I can cover it up is if I put in just white, which is not correct to the paint, to the image. So that's why it's a mess up. Now, normally that wouldn't be a mess up because I wouldn't be painting with transparency. So I'd just mix a opaque midtone and just cover it up. Problem solved. So there you go. That's the mistake. So the way I'm going to fix it is I'm just going to cover it up with straight up white, and then later I'll put in a third layer, go back in with the raw umber and darken it a bit. You don't see pencil lines? They're there. They're there, trust me. But yeah. Either way, it's worth mentioning so that people who are trying similar things, or decide to try similar things or whatever, can keep those things in mind for the future. You know, it is this is also something I think is worth mentioning for everyone who does art, right? Um, like Laura was saying, she doesn't see the pencil lines. And even if she did, a lot of people wouldn't care. To them, it would just be part of the artwork, just how it is, right? Or sometimes, and I know this from my personal experience, looking at artists I love, I'll look at something and be like, oh, I love how they handled this or they did that. And the reason that they handled it that way or left it in that way sometimes was just because it can even be they didn't have time to take it out. Like, sometimes it's even stuff like that. But it doesn't matter. I love it. You know, the, their mistakes, the things that they consider mistakes, are things that I find charming in their artwork a lot of times. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because when you're an artist, it's worth remembering that other people, when they view your art, aren't going to see all your mistakes as mistakes. I'm not saying this is a the go ahead to be sloppy or to not be, to not put an effort into learning your anatomy or anything like that, especially anatomy, because if you mess that up, that is one of those things that people notice a lot more. But all in all, to say, like, don't be a perfectionist. It's fine. People will often love your mistakes and your quirks, so to speak. And don't point them out to people that much. Like, I get it, if you're in an art class or something, sure, yeah, you're going to talk about like areas and challenges and so on. But when you're like showing people your art, don't start pointing out everything that's like a mistake, because they may love that part. And if they love that part, then they're going to feel bad about loving it because you're referring to what they love as a mistake. So just something to keep in mind, when you're showing your art. Like, it's different for a critique. If you're going for a critique, that's totally different thing. But when you're presenting your art, if you're, not very confident, just keep your mouth shut. Like, it's fine. Let people, appreciate things you didn't even see in your artwork, because that is the idea. You make something and then people get to like interpret it and see more in it, and they get to kind of project themselves onto it. Yeah, here I'm also struggling. So this is another mistake. And same thing up here. I know I just talked about that, but I'm doing this to, kind of instruct a little. So what happened was I didn't put enough uh, acrylic medium on this. Usually I do 2 coats. I didn't. I put 1 coat, and it didn't get full coverage. And so the raw umber went in and stained it. But now I'm once again running into that same problem where I can't cover it with a midtone. So I'm probably going to have to go in with some harsh white on some of this and then come back in later again. Uh, Kelly says, that's great to hear. Let them appreciate and interpret. Absolutely. Laura says there's a local art Facebook group that is trying to do gatherings for critiques and looking for people to participate. You would feel so uncomfortable. Yeah, I'll be honest. I've critiqued people before. It can be very awkward to give people critiques. I've gotten so much art critique at this point that I'm not like it doesn't doesn't phase me at this point. But that's because I have years and years of experience doing art critique. I've gotten some really horrible critiques in the past. And when I say horrible, I don't mean harsh. I mean bad. Bad critiques that tear you down, and that's their only purpose. That is different than getting honest, constructive, yet harsh critique. And honestly, you don't really need to give anybody harsh critique. There's, I don't like, I don't know the situation where you'd need to give someone harsh critique. I just don't. I'm sure it exists, but generally there's no reason for that. Um, Kelly says yesterday the jurors for the juried show art show you were in did a talk, and we could ask questions. We talked exactly on the point about how different people's interpretations and what they see within a work. Yeah, that's cool. Also, juried shows. I've applied to so many shows and not gotten in. Once again, it's not worth. Like it sucks because you obviously want to get into every show. Like I want my artwork to be in every single gallery, of course. But um, don't take it personally. If you enter a show and your stuff doesn't get picked, don't take it personally. I've talked to people who jury shows, and I've taught and like the reasoning and the thought process behind it is not often has nothing to do with the quality of the work. So if anybody wants critique on the quality of their work, go get critique on the quality of their work, on the quality of your work by someone who can give you good and constructive criticism. If it's not, then if that's not the situation you're in, don't listen. Just don't worry about it. Uh, Laura says, I seriously think it might just be a ploy to get people to join art classes by the person who wants to host the critique. Kelly says, I'm not always ready for a critique. Oh, yeah, that too. Don't give unsolicited critique. Um, but if it comes from a uh, passing comment, then I always can learn from it, others' perspective. Yeah, and yes and no. Like it depends who's giving the comment, honestly. It just depends. I just wouldn't take it. I guess the thing is I also would say I wouldn't take it personally, you know. Um is part of it. But I have a great story about what you were mentioning, Laura, about people getting a class. I've told this story. I've told this story before, but you may have not heard it, or someone else who's watching for the first time. So I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, is what I'm trying to say. 1 second. All right. So I used to go to Comic-Con every year because I wanted to be a comic book artist. That was like my goal. I wanted to get into comics, be a comic book artist. So I used to go to Comic-Con every year, San Diego Comic-Con, I should specify. And I would go to the portfolio reviews. And one year, all right, I'm gonna break for just a second so I can talk without So, and also I'll stretch while I'm doing this. So one year I go in for a critique with a big company. I'm not going to mention the company, and it's not a comic book company. It was a production company that does they do TV shows and movies, and they have properties that attach to books and so on. So just a lot of stuff. And the guy sitting there in this cubicle, because the way that they were set up was these like little cubicles, and he's sitting there with a stack like this big of pages, just regular printer paper, just like a stack, like 2 to 3 reams worth of paper. And I come in and he doesn't, it's off to the side. We do the normal introductions, whatever. He looks at my portfolio. He's like, oh, yeah, you've got potential. There's a lot of good things here, but you need some work. And here are some areas that you need to adjust and work on and blah, 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 all that stuff. And then at the end, he's like, here. And he grabs a piece of paper from the stack and hands it to me. And he goes, I'm teaching a class at such and such school. If you want to improve on these areas, you might want to sign up for it. Next! It's just like, what the fuck, man? How unprofessional. You are not there representing yourself. Like, he is an editor for a company. And this is his personal class that he's teaching at an art college unrelated. I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? I couldn't believe it. It was one of those moments that I'm just like, oh my God, you've just ruined your entire critique, because I can't take anything you said seriously, because like, talk about a bias and conflict of interest, right? Oh my God, it was just one of those moments. Yeah, that's horrible. Yeah, it's so messed up. I couldn't believe he did that. Time to stretch my back. But yeah, oh, that was so messed up. The thing is, I've had horrible reviews at Comic-Con where it was just like horrible in all kinds of ways, but that was the only one that felt malicious. You know what I mean? Just like, that was the only one that felt bad in that way. Like, I've done other ones where it's like, I've told this story before too. I had two portfolio reviews back to back, and I walked into one and they like shit all over my art. And then they were like, this one panel off of this one page is amazing. If you did everything like this, you would have a job. I walk out, go around the corner to the other interview, and they're like, oh man, your stuff's really good. We really like it, blah, blah, blah. But this one panel is a total eyesore. Like, you need to take this out of your portfolio. It makes you look bad. Same panel, right? It's like, okay, I don't feel like that's malicious. They're just, not good at giving portfolio reviews. That's fine. But this was just like shitty to do. Laura says exactly. He'd tell you anything to get you to sign up for his class. Absolutely. That's why it felt malicious. It's like, I'm going to tear you down, make you feel bad about yourself, and then be like, oh, but here's a way you can get better. That's so messed up. Kelly says, devastation. Bro, who do you believe? Neither. That's who you believe. You just don't listen to either one of them. Okay. If you want, here's how to evaluate. If you want to evaluate your artwork and your abilities and your skill and the, like, not skill, but like the artwork you put out, here's how you do it, okay? There's, I think, 3 major steps to it. 1, you do it yourself, of course, because you have to, right? You have to evaluate it. Try and look at it with as, objective eyes as you can. It's not always possible. It's not going to be perfect, but that's a start. Second, go to people who will give you, who are professionals, who will give you honest, fair critique and are good at giving critique. It's hard to find. It's not easy to find. For comics, for instance, go to other artists who have nothing to prove, artists who are good enough, who have nothing to prove, and get their critique. And don't just do one, do multiples, because you will see trends coming across, right? Like if the same, if you go and show it to a bunch of artists, and every professional artist you show your work to is like, yeah, you need to work on your anatomy, then you probably need to work on your anatomy. Honestly, everyone needs to work on their anatomy, but you probably really need to work on your anatomy. And then the third, and this one's the least, like I would rate this the least useful, is to get just critique in general from other people. Don't trust it, because most people don't know what they're talking about. But if you hear repeatedly the same thing over and over and over again, you start to see a pattern and you're like, okay. And here's the thing, from people who don't know what they're talking about, they may tell you, as an example, they may tell you, oh, the face is wrong. Every time you draw a face, it's wrong. Every time, they'll tell you, every time you put up a painting, they look at it and they're like, yeah, the face is wrong, the face is wrong, it just doesn't look right. Now, that doesn't actually mean the face is wrong. What it could mean is that the face is wrong and that you need to work on your faces. It could mean that you need to work on where the face sits inside of the head. Could mean that you need to work on the proportion of the head to the body. It's really hard to tell. They don't know what they're talking about. So they see something's wrong and they're not sure what it is, and they just say it. So that's why, if you brought it to an artist who's good at this, they'll be able to tell you where the problem is. But it at least gives you an indication, right? It's a starting point. That's how I would go about evaluating my art. If I was, in that, at that level again. Or that would be my advice to people who are starting out. I think at a certain point, how can I put this? At a certain skill level, it stops being an issue of skill and it starts being an issue of choices, energy, time, stuff like that. To give an example, I know that not all my paintings, the anatomy's perfect, right? I'd like to get really close, but but sometimes it's off. Something's off. That's fine. I usually know when it's off. It's just an issue of like I either didn't want to fix it, I didn't have the time to fix it, or I liked the way it looked even though it was off, because that also is a thing. You know, I don't need I almost never need someone to come in and be like, "Hey, just so you know, in case you weren't aware, that eye, it's a little off." I'm like, yeah, I know. I know. I've drawn enough, I've painted enough eyes. I know. Now, I'm not saying I have nothing to learn. I'm not trying to say that at all. I'm just saying that unsolicited kind of critique in that way usually isn't that helpful. Let's see. Kelly says, yeah, it helped you triangulate a path once you evaluated your own goals with their feedback. Yes, 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 absolutely. Laura says, how long do you have for this assignment? A week? Yeah, but I have 2 paintings to do, this one and another one. So I'm going to finish this one. I'm going to finish most of it today, and then next on Wednesday I'm going to be working on another painting. These are 9 by 12s, by the way, so they're not big paintings, you know. But yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. There are occasions where, like, I'm drawing something and I'm looking at it, I'm like, something's off and I can't tell what it is. Sometimes having an artist or someone I know tell me, like, oh, I think it's the face or this proportion's wrong, can be very helpful. A lot of times I just step away from it and come back to it and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I didn't see this earlier. Once you come back with fresh eyes, you kind of see it right away. But yeah, I didn't want it to sound like I was trying to say I have nothing to learn. Clearly, I'm taking a class because I believe that we always have stuff to learn and improve on. But when you're new and then you're in the early stages. I mean, even when I'm not saying other people. Me too. I look back at my old artwork and I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? No wonder I didn't get a job, you know, at the time. Like, I get it. I get it. Laura says, oh my gosh, eyes drive me nuts when the artist makes them cross-eyed or whatever. You work so hard to get at getting the eyes right. I agree. And it still happens to me occasionally. Like you know, what one of the big things that happens is I'll do a painting or a drawing and I'll finish it. And because I've been staring at it so long, I don't see some of the mistakes. And then I come back and I see the mistake. But at that point, I've already finished it. And I'm already like 3 paintings away from it. I'm just like, oh, who cares? Whatever. Next time I'll get it right. I try to get eyes right. Eyes are very important, obviously. But I'm just saying, like, in general, that is something that happens. Um, yeah. Yeah, eyes are really important to people. So it's definitely something to focus on. I love Sargent's approach to eyes. I don't, I'll be honest, this might be a myth because it's Sargent. So, information is a little limited. So this might not be true, but supposedly he would do the eyes last on a face. And the idea was if you get everything right, you can just kind of like drop them in and they'll be right in the right place and it'll all be, done well and correct. Which is kind of an insane way of going about it. Yet that is kind of the way kind of something I've adopted. And I'll explain that in a second. But yeah, supposedly that's what his approach to it. Also, he supposedly would start the whole painting over if he got the eyes wrong. But that might be a myth. That might be one of those stories that they tell that isn't true. I don't know. But I will say this, I do leave the eyes for the end. Not the end, but near the end. I'll paint them in. I'll paint in like the general part of it, but I won't detail out the eye until the end. And the reason is because as things change, I don't want to be anchored in by that like perfect eye that I painted, because I might need to move it. Like maybe I messed up and the eye needs to go, a few millimeters in any direction. I don't want to be anchored in by that like perfect eye that I happen to paint. So I put in the generalization of it, and I trust myself to be able to get it right where it, after I know where it's supposed to be. And I will say, this is not a confidence that I used to have in myself. This is like, I used to try and get the eyes right first with the rationale that if I don't get the eye right, then I'll start over, because there's no point in continuing if the eye isn't right. Like why even bother continuing the painting if I don't get this part right? But I've kind of flipped it out of, since I basically trust myself to get it right now. And I will say this, I think that's a better approach. And it's not just a better approach because I'm a better artist than I used to be. It's also a better approach because it will help you get the eyes right. Because it will put you in, it will constrain it. It like locks the form into place a little. So you know where it needs to go. You know what size it needs to be. These are all very helpful factors. Having said that, if you're painting in a medium that doesn't allow you to go back and forth and mess around with it the way oils does, forget what I'm saying and do it the way you need to, because that's a little different. I wouldn't approach it that way with watercolor. So it's worth mentioning. There is a caveat to all of that. Man, it is windy out here. By the way, if something happens and I disconnect, that might be because of how windy it is here. I actually thought I might not be able to stream today because of how windy it is. Like, it is very, very windy here right now. I straight up hate this. Like, there are elements of this painting right now, not of the painting itself, but of the process that I am just like, oh my God, I hate not having access to this element of painting that I normally do have access to. Because normally when I paint, I don't use transparency much in my painting, but it's not like I have some kind of like, lock on transparency where I can't use it. Like I've scumbled before. It's not like I don't have access to any transparency in my painting normally. But to not have access to like the opaque factors of it is driving me crazy right now. And it also highlights to me like how what's it called? How sloppy I was in earlier stages because normally I can rely on the opaque elements to use to compensate. And without them, you have to take more time to get certain things right the first time because there is no way of dealing with it later. So, yeah. And sloppy, it's worth, once again, it is a thing of like choice. It's like, I don't have to worry about this normally, so why bother worrying about it? I don't need, I don't want to waste any mental energy on something I don't need to. Kelly says, yeah, using Umber for me drives me crazy too. Yeah, it's not just the Umber, although Umber does drive me crazy too because of how like quickly it what's it called? Dries. But yeah, it's that transparency element to it that I'm just like, yeah. You love it but also hate it. I'll be honest, I used to use burnt umber. This is raw umber that I'm using. I've used, I have all kinds of colors that I used to use that are no longer on my palette. There's a reason I took them out. Transparency feels more wild, whereas opaque feels more controllable. You know, I get that, Kelly. That's kind of how it's feeling right now. But if I'm if I'm evaluating it more analytically, I will say it's not so much wild versus controlled. It's kind of it's kind of a thing of like how can I put this? You're essentially breaking up the process in different stages and putting more emphasis or importance in different stages into like doing it correctly in that stage. So what I mean is when I paint the way I've been painting lately, I just like sketch things in loosely. Um, I don't have to get the drawing like right. I have to get it close. Then I drop in all my I drop in all the like big color groups and everything. Then I go over it with a brayer and mess everything up. And then I go and fix the drawing again. And that's where I start like tightening up the drawing some more. And then I often do it again at a later stage as well. So the process of like getting the drawing right, like getting everything in the right place, is spread out throughout the painting, right? Whereas when I'm in this way, it would have to be more like do the drawing, get the drawing locked in correct, and then the drawing element is done. Then you go in with the umber, and that is all like what's the word I'm looking for? That is all like mostly the darks you're modeling, and so on. So it's a different way of breaking it up, I guess. Laura says, Kelly, you see on his palette, bottom left, of the guy in the blue shirt and brown hoodie cape. I see it. Kelly says, I see it now, Lamau. Wait, what's this? A guy in a blue shirt and brown hoodie cape. This? Wait, this over here? You love finding, Laura says, I love finding images on palettes. Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. It's a good way of, seeing things abstractly too. Yeah, I see it. I see what you're saying. That's funny. Yeah, it's the fun to like go stare at clouds and stuff like that and try and find shapes in it. I don't I don't do that enough. I think it's actually something that's A, fun to do, and B, a good way of like stretching your imagination. Billy says, I'm currently using a raw umber-ish palette for a little portrait practice you're doing. Nice. Look, like I said, I was talking about the what's it called? The Zorn palette well, I think yesterday, but just in general, like I get why the Zorn palette is so good for like portraits. Like it's all the colors are very close to like portrait colors, to begin with. So, it's definitely useful. I just don't like it. There's I don't like using it, but I can understand it. And same with raw umber. Like raw umber is a great color. In fact, there's a lot of great elements to it. It's cheap. Gotta love that. It dries fast, which I hate, but a lot of people love because there are benefits to having a paint that dries fast. Um, you know, um, I generally hate it because I like to work wet into wet. And it's digital though. It doesn't matter. I mean, some of that matters then, but you're going for constricting your what's it called? Uh, your color range then, which is also very good to do. So yeah. Um, but yeah, you know, it's a great color. I will say this, I had a teacher that she made us buy what was it? like a red earth color. And the reason is, for her class, the reason was we would use that for laying in the drawing and blocking in the shadows. Like that was the color she used in her class for that purpose. And it's a great color, like a beautiful color. It's a transparent earth red, I think, or something like that. But you basically said, after you block in everything, put that color aside and use the rest of the palette only. Don't use that color anymore. And I was kind of confused by that because normally when you're using a limited palette, you want kind of all your colors you want it to be harmonious. And so you want to use kind of all the colors in the painting. And it's just such a weird idea to me. But the reason was basically she said, if you don't, what you're going to end up doing is just using this color to paint the whole painting. And you will tint it, you will change it a little, but the whole painting will end up just brownish red, because everything's kind of brownish red or gray, with the exception of like things that stand out, like flowers or stop signs or whatever. But generally, the world's a lot like grayer than we think of, and browner than we generally think of it. And so everything's just going to end up being like that color. So to avoid that, yeah. Oh, my Discord link is messed up. I'll fix it. Sorry, Laura. Give me a minute and I'll fix it. Kelly says, yeah, I'm limiting my palette. It helps, I think, when adding color in my past few paintings. It lost a bit of mood. So if you want my kind of, that's the word I'm looking for, my recipe for mood, I can give it to you. It's not the perfect recipe to creating a mood in a painting, and it's not like other artists will pull it off in other ways. I'm not, the authority on it. But I can give you my personal like go-to recipe for creating moody paintings. In just a second, when my brain has the capacity for it. Yeah, the link expired for the Discord. Let me get that for you in just a minute. Laura says, I've been an admin in someone's Discord, and every 2 weeks the invite link would expire even though you set it to never expire, so it's a pain sometimes. Yeah, Discord has its quirks, and it is a pain. Yeah, I set it to never expire, and so on. Same thing. Okay. Liad's mood recipe. Yes, Liad's mood recipe. So if you want to create, it's okay. It's worth mentioning. There's a difference between mood and like moody or atmospheric. Those are two different things. I'm talking about moody and atmospheric, like those two things. So let me construct this in my head for a second. My recipe for creating moody or atmospheric paintings. So one is lost edges. A lot of soft lost edges with only a few like really hard, hard spots with like hard edges. This isn't perfect, and I'll explain later why, but generally, yes. Compressed value range. You can compress it into any range you want. It can be dark, midtones, or lights, or in any variation, but it has to be a small value range. And I would also say compressed saturation range or color gamut. You can use any colors you want, but the saturation and it needs to be compressed too. Yeah. Those, I think that is like my the 3 points I would say that like the 3 ingredients that go into a moody or atmospheric painting. Now, this isn't perfect because for instance, you could theoretically do a very moody atmospheric painting with nothing but hard edges. The thing is, if you did that, the what's it called? The change in value or color between those hard edges would have to be so minute as to achieve from a distance lost edges regardless, right? So it's not a, these aren't perfect rules, but that's my general recipe for a a a moody or atmospheric painting, I think. Yeah. All right, let me get the Discord link real quick and put it in my channel. My Discord is not the best at the moment. I eventually will uh eventually I will what's it called? I will work on getting my Discord to be quote unquote better. But yeah. All right, let's see. Discord, here we go. All right, save, and here, paste. Yeah, Discord, it's a whole thing. It's going to take time. Don't have enough people in there at the moment to make it like a priority. Oh, this is really nice. This is coming along really nice. Uh, Kelly, this is looking good. I will say it is hard to do atmospheric drawings or paintings of like portraits, like just straight up close up of a person's face portrait is hard to do. It's not impossible, obviously. It's more of a challenge because uh Justin's here. Yeah, I know, meow meow. Oh, we're back at this now, Justin. Immediately go for the licking. Hi, little boy. He's a little spooked. He doesn't like bad weather. It's like the wind is so loud right now you can hear it gusting and it's spooky. Yes, the Fluff King. Oh, yeah, baby boy. Oh, we're back to licking. Okay, thank you, little boy. Okay, I'll put you down. So yeah, portraits are not easy to do moody or atmospheric. Yeah, they're not. Um, you hear the ASMR. Could you hear him purring at all? I have a filter, so I don't know what gets through and what doesn't. Let me get some portraits out here and show some moody stuff a little bit. Um, so it's worth mentioning that there's a difference, there's a difference between like close-up portraits of people, like straight up, a portrait, and figurative art that has people's faces in it, but isn't what I would consider a portrait. Like those two things are not the same. They can be very, very close to each other, but they're not the same. So it's worth keeping that in mind when painting, in general. All right, there was one that I was looking for that I couldn't find, but oh well. Oh, weird. Oh, that one's a good one too. Okay. I have a bunch of portraits to show off right now. And this isn't to show off like, oh, look how good I am. This is to talk about like painting atmospheric and moody in a painting. You heard the licks. Oh, that's funny. All right. There's one more I wanted. Oh, there's one that I was looking for. All right. All right. So a lot of paintings to go through real quick, but let's talk about it. And then I have to get back to painting because I need to finish this. Yeah. All right. So this painting, right? This isn't a portrait, in my opinion. There is a face in it, but this is figurative art. This isn't like, I wouldn't consider this a portraiture, especially because her face is almost non-existent in the painting. But yeah, the focus isn't on the likeness and making it look just like her. It is the whole painting overall. So to me, like this is what I consider, figurative, not portrait. I don't know if these are the accurate terms. I'm just trying to like catalog it in my mind. Also, like I said, she barely has a face. Like if you look at this face, there is like almost nothing there, right? Like it's as lacking in detail as you can imagine. So that's what I mean. But it is moody. It's definitely moody. Here is a portrait that I also consider moody or atmospheric, right? And the reason this one, I think, pulls off being moody or atmospheric is for the exact reasons I mentioned earlier, right? There's a bunch of lost edges. There's a lack of detail. The color range is very compressed. The value range is very compressed, you know, but you lose so much. Like if I go to, let's see, painting. Yeah. So there's so, like, even the eyes are lacking a ton of detail, right? Like this one has more detail than this one, but there's like, normally the way that I would often paint something or other people would paint something, you know, or draw something, there would be a ton more detail in the face, right? Very moody for sure. Love the smoke. Yeah, I have a series of smoking paintings. I'm against smoking, but I like it in paintings. And here, you know, I think I've kind of proven the point. I don't need to like go in and talk about everything, but here's another painting I did, which I think is pretty, you know, I think this one's pretty like moody and atmospheric, right? Like I think it, hold on, let me cancel the tracking real quick. I think it pulls that off pretty well, right? Her hand's a little large, but that always sticks out to me. That was a poor choice of composition because it's actually that large, but that's neither here nor there. But I did this painting twice. Here is another variation of it. Camera's struggling to pick it up because this is a single tone painting. The idea, or single value painting. The idea was to try and paint the whole thing in a single value. So if you turn it black and white, this should turn just one shade of gray. It doesn't. I'm not perfect, not a machine. But it is, it's so hard to see. But this definitely more atmospheric in a way than this. This one's darker, so it has more of a brooding element to it that like a hyper bright painting like that doesn't. But yeah. And then here's one last one I'll show, which you can see very compressed values. Like it goes from like a dark gray, which is the darkest dark, and then with the exception of the smoke, it doesn't get very light, right? The smoke was done on purpose as like a what's it called? An element to stand out. It also has a lot more texture than everything else. But I chose those points on purpose to like really make those points stand out. But like if you, like when I squint, the background and her body are very close in value. So a lot of that stuff gets, you know, like blends together because the value is so close. The color is slightly different, and that's why it doesn't entirely blend, but that is why it that is one of the contributing factors to it being atmospheric. Anyways, any color scheme can be moody, absolutely, but the dark colors tend to lean towards like moody brooding, and lighter colors tend towards like atmospheric, hazy, light feeling, like light in feeling, not just color. Um, you know, um, those are just tendencies and how we think of things. So that's not that's personally how I think of things. It's not a those aren't hard rules or anything. But yeah, that's just like how the connections that I personally give to it. You know. So, anyways, that's the idea, at least. Yeah, I'm sure it's doable, but I also think it'd probably be hard to paint someone brooding in like a super high key. Like I said, I don't think it's impossible, but it's definitely more challenging. Like I'm thinking of characters that and stories that I used to watch, and like I'm thinking of brooding characters, like, and I'm thinking about them being in like super light environments. Like imagine Batman brooding, but everything's at an value 8 and above. Like it's impossible, but it's gonna be hard. Random question: because you have long hair, have you braided your hair? I have. I've braided my hair before. I had someone actually do like the not exactly Viking braids, but like multiple braids before kind of thing. Something I cannot do for myself to at all. But yeah, I've braided it before. I'm not good at braiding it. I basically usually when I braid it to keep it just out of my face kind of thing. Brooding in a cubicle with office lighting, yeah, it's challenging. You know, it's definitely more challenging. It, Nothing is impossible. Well, I don't know if nothing's impossible, but theoretically, it's not impossible. It's just a lot more work. Hey, Don Lee, welcome. Don Lee just jumped into the Twitch chat. Is that why you don't see Batman in pastels as much anymore? Yeah, although I do think that the his pink uniform was his pink suit was kind of special. Or his rainbow one. He did have a rainbow one too. This is canon, by the way. Batman had a rainbow suit and a pink one and all kinds of colors. Yeah, I will say this, I am starting to feel like I'm hitting the limit to what I can functionally do in this painting without like leaving it to dry to come back to it later. I don't entirely like that feeling, but I am starting to feel like that is the case. Not to say that someone else would, that everybody working on this painting at this stage would feel that way. Not at all. I think with more experience, I wouldn't even feel that way. But currently, that's where like I'm feeling like I'm hitting the limit on my ability in this circumstances, and it's in my ability and because of the mistakes I made previously, right? Like had I done this, had I set this up better, I wouldn't be hitting these limitations. Donley says, yeah, I've seen a few of those too. The Batman covers, the Batman costumes, yeah. Kelly says Pride Batman. Yeah. Yeah, although I think that was before rainbows were even associated with that, I'll be honest. Some of them are so old. Yeah. I will say this, sometimes it's a little hard on stream. And I really try to resist this feeling and temptation, but it's a little hard sometimes. You like, personally, I think, you know, I think this applies to everybody, but definitely applies to me. Like, I don't want to look bad, right? Like, I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing as an artist. As an artist, there's often this feeling of like not knowing what you're doing because there's this weird, like, kind of stumbling your way through things and you know what you're doing, but you don't entirely know how you got there sometimes. Even Nicholas Uribe has talked about that. Like I know I'm not the only one. So there's that element to it. And then when you're doing something, like when I'm doing something like this, where I've clearly like self-sabotaged myself because I'm trying something new and I didn't know and so on. And even if I'm not, like people make mistakes, there's no getting around that. When streaming, it's very challenging to not like to either like there's the feeling of wanting to either not acknowledge it or claim like it wasn't me, I guess, or whatever. But I want to make sure that like that I don't do that, and I want new artists or young artists, don't have to be young to be a new artist, but I want inexperienced artists to know that it happens to everybody. It's not a big deal. And it's not something to be ashamed of or to be concerned about. It's a way of learning. Like when I started taking Chelsea Lang's class, by the way, shout out Chelsea Lang. She has a really good YouTube channel and a class. I learned a lot from her. Um, you know, but when I first started with her, that was exactly what happened. Like I learned just how much I was shooting myself in the foot when I was preparing a painting because my reference, um, I wasn't good at like gathering reference. I wasn't gathering good reference rather because it like there's so much in the setup that like where you're setting yourself up to either for success or failure early on before paint ever goes down. And I didn't have a lot of experience with that. So, because I'd done a lot of like drawing from imagination, I do storyboards and so on. A lot of that's from your head a lot of times. So, I didn't have as much experience with that. And I constantly made mistakes. I still make mistakes setting up my reference and setting up paintings, but I make less of them. And I usually don't make the same ones over and over and over again all the time. So my success rate has shot up because of for that exact reason. So this being something that I'm not as, what's it called? Used to, like, yeah, I made a ton of mistakes early on that are making all of this a lot harder. Mistakes and missteps are a process of opportunities to learn from. Absolutely, Elijah or Kelly. Absolutely. And good reference. Ooh, yeah. Well, the thing is, good reference, like, what is good reference? There's no answer for that. Like, what is good reference? I can't tell you what good reference is because it depends on the type of artwork you're making, and so the type of reference you need is going to change drastically, and the stages and how you prep the painting also change, just like this one did. So all in all, to say is, I'm just saying that, like, it's just part of the learning process, and if you make a bad drawing or a bad painting, it's it's just a great opportunity to learn from it, and that's it. Like, don't worry about it. Actually, I just saw something recently where Proco, for people who don't know, Proco has a YouTube channel. He's a really good artist and he's a great teacher. But he did a live stream. Apparently, this is famous at this point. I didn't know about it until just now. I was on a different stream I was watching. But he tried to draw a kangaroo from imagination, and I guess he'd never drawn a kangaroo from imagination, and he doesn't really have a good grasp of what a kangaroo looks like, because you think you know what something looks like, but until you start, actually trying to draw it, once you start drawing it, you realize, oh yeah, I don't actually have a good grasp on what this thing looks like. The thing he created is an abomination. It's pretty funny. Uh, and he's a great artist. Like, Proco is straight up really, really good. Kelly says it was so bad. Oh my God. Yeah, I didn't even know about it. This is like, I just heard about it. It's so funny. And it's great. He just laughs at it. And it's just like, yeah, it's fine. Poor creature didn't ask to be brought into this world this way. Yeah. All right. Like I said, I think I've hit the limit. Like, there's all these places that I want to add stuff, and I can't. I just cannot add what I want to it. Um, so I'm getting very close to being done for the night, possibly for the homework, because let's be honest, I'm not, like, I don't always expect to get a complete painting out of homework. So we'll see. I'll shoot this off into the uh, class Discord and see what Nicholas says. What I'm tempted to do, I'll do my other painting on Wednesday. Regardless, I have another painting to do. I'll work on that on Wednesday, so that'll be a new painting. Hopefully, start to finish on Wednesday. By the way, hopefully, and then what I might do to this one is I might, I'll take a photo of this, document where it's at, and then I will go in with an opaque layer where I can mix a range of the colors I want. Still keep it monochrome, but opaque, and just go in and, like, knock back all the things I need to and bring it all, do all the things I want, basically. We'll see. We'll see. I'm limited on time and I have a bunch of other paintings I need to finish, but I feel like this one would be pretty quick to do that with. I just need to go in and like hit a few spots to just correct it and put in some of that form that I like it and feel like it's missing right now. Like to give an example, right here, there's some hair, but I can't like, I need to go in with the darks again to put in some dark so that I can put in some lights. And that's so frustrating because at this stage I don't have the darks. I only have the lights to put in. So, part of the learning experience for sure. Don Lee says, I'm about to type Proco kangaroo into the internet and cross my fingers. That's funny. Yeah, good luck. It's pretty funny. It's been great watching you do homework. Oh, thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. Well, no, yeah, I gotta let it dry. Yes and no. If I'm gonna go in with just burnt umber again, yeah, I gotta let it dry. If I were to go in with opaque, if I were to like just go in and paint, like forget this process, like be like, okay, this is as far as I got, and now I'm done with my homework. I take a photo, turn it in, and now I'm going to finish it my way, quote unquote, my way, right? So to speak. Then I don't have to wait for it to dry at all. That is one of the advantages to how I currently paint. I wouldn't need it to be dry at all. I could just go in, mix. The way I would do it, ironically, is not as a technical monochrome. I would mix, so raw umber would be my darks, my black, white is my white, and then I would mix those as a midtone, but it gets a little too gray for a midtone and for my liking. So I would probably add in a little more yellow and red to it to warm it up a bit. And that would be like my mid-tone. And then and it would be opaque. And then I could go in and I could fix all the areas that I'm like struggling with. And then just, I wouldn't need it to dry basically. That would be my approach to this. If I were to do it my way, like if I would be like, okay, I'm done with the homework, I'm doing it my way now. That's how I would go about it. Because then I could go in and I could, like for the hair, I'd go in, I can put in the darks, then I can put in midtones, and then I can put in lights. That's how I paint all the time, you know, so it'd be no problem. And the reason I would, and the only reason I would mix in those colors is because the raw umber, it mixed with white just feels, it's kind of this grayish dead color. I didn't like it. Like I did mix it a little to test it out and I was just like, I didn't like that. So I would want to add some warmth to it. Or the other color I could introduce is, let me see if I have it right here. I pulled it out. I pulled it. That sounds wrong. I put it aside so that I would have access to it. Still not great, but a little better. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh, I have some Winsor whites still. Huh, okay. Good to know. Yellow ochre might work well with it. That might be a nice color as well. But no, where is that? Where is that color? I swear I set it aside recently. Huh. That's odd. Did I set it aside somewhere else by accident? My studio is a mess at the moment. And by at the moment I mean my entire life forever and always. Um oh, here it is. Transparent Earth Red. Yeah. If I were going to, this would also be a great color to add. It's such a pretty color. Let's see if I can open it real quick. Yeah, yellow ochre is a good color. Transparent Earth Red. Um, yeah. So here, let me just show this real quick and then I'm done. Oh, Don Lee, I know that you're sorry. I didn't read it out loud. I know that was a comment directed at Proko's kangaroo. I know. He said it was horrifying. Yeah. No, I know what you're referring to. No worries. So look, I'll have to wipe it off once I put it on, but just to give like, in this area, like, that's such a warm, pretty earth red to like add to the painting, right? Like for like transitional areas. It's such a pretty color. It goes so well with it. And the yellow will give like golden colors because there's some places here that like really have some golden colors. But yeah, you want to mix it with Quin Magenta. Uh, I don't. I'll be honest. I don't see the point in quinacridone magenta anymore. I used to, but sorry. I use quinacridone rose, and it's better than quinacridone magenta in every way. Um, that's my opinion. I know it's not everybody's opinion, but that is my opinion on it. The reason I think that is because I can take quinacridone rose and mix it with a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow and a little bit of black and so on. I'm not actually sure what colors I need to mix with it. I'd have to like look. But I can mix colors with it and I can essentially mix quinacridone magenta with it. But you can't take magenta and mix quinacridone rose with it. It's not capable of it. You mean for a wine color? Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, you are absolutely right. So I guess same thing for goes for what's it called? Um, alizarin crimson. It's a beautiful color. Yeah, I have a weird way of evaluating colors. I evaluate them more from a like a utility standpoint than like when I'm talking about pigments than I do from a like what color I appreciate more, I guess. But yeah, that's the like, I don't know. I'm utilitarian in that way, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it is a pretty color. I do agree with you there. When I'm looking at it purely from that way, it is a very pretty color. Utility is important. Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, often special colors can collect dust. Absolutely, they do. I used to put out, to give an example, and then I will be ending stream. To give an example, I used to have quinacridone rose, quinacridone magenta, and then rose, and I used to have the either one of those on my palette, and I also used to have oh, what's it called? Um, oh my God, my brain. Um, red cad red light. That's it, cad red light. And I'd put cad red light out, and I wouldn't touch it because you can mix a color very close to cad red light with those colors. But more than that, I usually don't need cad red light. I need a red that is, going to influence things because I'm going to mix with it. And so I ended up just not touching my cad red, and it would always dry on the palette because, like I said, I'm usually mixing it in with stuff. I'm not using it straight out of the tube. So I just stopped putting it out. Now it's just sitting in my drawer. Eventually I'll use it at some point. Like there are times I will use it without a doubt. But yeah, it's just sitting there now. I have no need to put it out most of the time. Anyways, I think that's where I'm gonna call it a night. Um, yeah, I'm happy with it. Not entirely. Like it still needs at least one more layer or just a complete, different approach either way. But yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I think it looks pretty good. So Wednesday night, I will be painting a different painting, a black and white, no transparency, just opaque, uh, you know, uh, painting. So that'll be Wednesday night. Anyways, think that's all. Have a great night. Have a great week, everybody. Hope everybody has decent weather. And yeah, have a good one.